I'd like to ask the Minister for Policy and Reform if he will make a statement on the relationship between the Passenger Survey 2017 and the data from the transport and hospitality sector.
Go on, the Minister for Policy and Reform to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President. And this is a long answer, relatively. The programme for government includes an action to review and implement changes to the way we collect, analyse and report national statistics by April 2019, and that includes, amongst other surveys, the passenger survey. The passenger survey is based upon the actual numbers of departures through both the airport and the sea terminal. As the report's methodology highlights, the survey is used to split departing passengers into Manx residents or visitors, and then what kind of visitor they are. The new data that has been discussed, particularly in the media, by the transport and hospitality sector, has not been previously factored into the passenger survey, and not all of that data would be suitable for inclusion within the passenger survey. For example, data from hotels would not help in identifying visitors who stay with friends or family, which is a key part of the visitor community in our island. However, some of the new data, such as the passenger origination data, where the passengers are beginning trips outside or inside of the island, is potentially very useful, and officers are investigating the potential use of this new data. The Isle of Man Steam Packet Company has already agreed to provide this type of data, and requests have been made to all of the airlines serving the island for similar data. If this type of passenger data is suitable for use and is provided by a significant proportion of the transport sector, then the survey would not be required to split passengers into Manx residents or visitors. However, the survey would still be required in order to produce estimates of the type of visitor to the island, what they are spending, and other such qualitative information useful for our population policy, our visitor policy, and all those sorts of other survey type information. Other information regarding transport and hospitality is collected, analysed and reported and used in other ways. Thank you, Mr. President. Honourable members.
Supplementary question, Mr. Moorhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President, and thank you, Minister. Recognising the changes you were making in 2019, do you remain confident that the figures released before Good Friday are accurate?
Minister to reply.
Thank you very much. In fact, the figures weren't released on Thursday before Good Friday. The figures were released on March the 9th. Okay? They're a regular part of the programme for government quarterly reporting, and the quarterly reporting that had the number of visitors, the spend per visitor, and the average length of stay for visitor were reported to the public as part of the regular quarterly reporting. There was then a period when the actual text of the passenger survey was more widely available and discussed, and in the end it was decided to release the passenger survey, which is dated February 2018, on Thursday. So I'm happy with the survey. I'm happy with the document. With hindsight, officers involved believe, quite rightly, that as a policy now they won't tend to release documents unless they're embargoed on a Thursday or Friday before weekends or public holidays.
Supplementary question, Mr. Moorhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President, and thank you, Minister. Given the huge 8.7% fall suggested by the figures, was the data collection and analysis actively reviewed before the data was released?
Minister to reply.
Yes.
Wonderful. More answers like that, please. Supplementary question, Ms. Edge.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. The Minister stated that he'll review and implement changes in the recording of the data. I'm just very concerned that are we going to then receive nonsense figures, and how are we going to benchmark in the future, or is it a way of making the figures look better next year?
Minister to reply.
Thank you. I think I've tried to explain that very clearly in my initial answer. There are lots of surveys, because that's the way to get good qualitative information. There are some sorts of alternatives, but surveys are an important part of the statistical armoury. Sampling is a very good statistical approach, and it's necessary if there's not a simple, nowadays, computer-generated figure that can be produced. As I've said, the steam packets figures only correspond to 42% of passenger departures. The rest is airlines. The steam packet data is different from the traditional visitor data. It's passenger origination data. All the steam packets seem to know, but we'll explore this more, is whether a return journey originated in the UK or whether it originated in the Isle of Man. That's different. It could be that the steam packet figure is higher this year by that much, and last year it was higher by that much, and the year before it was higher by that much. So whenever you're going to begin to change any sort of data that's published, especially data that's been published since the late 19th century, you're going to actually review for a couple of years the new data source and what it actually is telling you, exactly as I've done really professionally with officers for the inflation indices that we've changed, exactly as we've done with median and average earnings that we've changed. This review of statistics isn't just about the passenger survey, it's about all statistics, national income, quarterly economic reports, earnings surveys, inflation surveys, unemployment and so on. It's about all statistics. We can constantly get better. It's very important for me that we separate statistics out into the ones that are official national statistics, that politicians shouldn't be able to manipulate or change in any way, from those that are helpful for government as they form government policy and understand as they present government policy that's going to deal with the real challenges that the statistics show.
Supplementary question, Mr Baker.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. Very straightforward question for me for the Minister for Policy and Reform. Appreciate an equally straightforward answer. Does he believe that the data published in the passenger survey gives us a robust basis for drawing conclusions about trends in our visitor numbers?
Minister to reply.
Yes, the survey is robust until proved otherwise, and the way it will be proved otherwise is through a well-considered statistical consideration of other sources of data, some of which have now come to be available. It doesn't give the whole picture. It doesn't tell you how tourism's doing. It doesn't tell you much about everything about our visitors and what they do with their money. It doesn't tell you about what's going on in the leisure economy. That's all different type of information. The passenger survey breaks down the departing passengers at Ronaldsway and at the sea terminal into categories as it has done for decades. Now we supplement it with other qualitative information to help us with our locate.im and our visit.im strategies.
Apologies. Supplementary question, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. Given the size of the drop and your answer to the previous question, what additional review was carried out prior to the data being released?
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. The officers were encouraged by senior officers and politicians involved to make sure that they were confident in the analysis. You have to understand that surveys about visitors, TT, motorsports, have been changing over the last decade, and I think everybody involved will agree that now is the time to review how we do our TT survey, how we do our motorsport survey more generally, how we do our visitor survey, how we do our passenger survey, and that's just in this part of official statistics, and that is why, before this episode even started, Cabinet Office, in the person of me and the Chief Secretary, decided to put into the programme for government a comprehensive review of official statistics, which I was delighted that Council Ministers agreed to put into the programme for government, and nobody in Tynwald Court as yet has expressed any objection.
Supplementary question, Dr Allenson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. Can I ask the Minister, would he accept that some of the other information in the passenger survey which included an increase in the average length of stay of visitors and also a massive increase of 23% in the average spend of visitors, actually is consistent with some of the data from the transport and hospitality sector. One of the other documents produced by the Cabinet Office is the Business Confidence Survey, which shows that in terms of the services sector, which includes shipping, aircraft and tourism, over 30% over the last 6 months showed that their business situation has developed. And so coming back to the original question, in terms of data from the transport and hospitality sector, does the passenger survey actually reflect some of the improvements that have been happening on the ground in the Isle of Man?
Minister to reply.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr Deputy President. That is a very helpful question. This should have been the focus of what these figures unpick. In the programme for government, the Department for Enterprise, Council of Ministers and Tynwald Court set itself the objectives of increasing the visitor spend and increasing the amount of time that visitors stayed in hotels, and the figures demonstrate they have been successful. There is also an objective in terms of visitor numbers, and that's work in progress, and I for one, was very impressed with the destination management plan and the destination audit behind it, and the new destination marketing activity seems to be very encouraging and very promising. So I thank that question. We did change the visitor survey this year to unpick further about the average visitor spend, as we've referenced in the methodology of the passenger survey. We did actually say, to cover ourselves, that part of the rate of increase may in part be attributable to improved data collection methods applied to visitor expenditure, but I hope not. I hope it genuinely reflects the fact that the Department for Enterprise and all those involved are doing a good job turning round at 10, 20, 30, some people would say even longer decline in old-fashioned tourism and the emergence of a new tourism, which is the main point in all of this.
Supplementary question, Mr Hooper.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. It's reassuring to hear the Minister explain the figures a little bit more and add some context, add some meat to the bones of the passenger survey. But my question to him is, really, wouldn't it have been better if some of this context was available before the data was released, maybe released alongside the passenger survey information, to stop some of the negative press that's been getting around about Isle of Man tourism decline? And perhaps if his department had been slightly more careful in the way the information was released, we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
Minister to reply.
Cabinet Office is responsible for, Mr President, Mr Deputy President, Cabinet Office is responsible for official statistics. I don't want to get into I did this, I did that, he said this, he said that, but the truth is this passenger survey was first discussed between departments and relevant officers at the end of January. There was continuing discussion through February and March, and there are lessons to be learned for everybody involved, and let's leave it at that.
Question, Mr Baker.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. So, coming back to my previous question, which I think I got the answer to in the first word, but I'd just like the Minister to confirm that, and then that'll do as the answer. Does he believe that the data on visitor numbers from the passenger survey for 2017 is robust for assessing trends in our visitor numbers?
Minister to reply.
Thank you. The survey is robust, and during the coming 2 years we will review the way we collect information about visitor numbers, taking into account the new information that emerged a couple of weeks ago.